and are just some of the words that you may hear in today's podcast. Enjoy! Hello and welcome to the Perfect Information Podcast, a board game podcast tasting the rainbow with me, Ben Maddox, and a man actually filling in his tax return,
Yorgos Panagiotidis.
Georgie.
Yes, Ben.
How are you?
Not too bad, actually. I've calmed down. I'm much more, I think, balanced. I found my equilibrium.
Are you feeling alt-right?
Oh, good Lord. I hope not.
No, I've decided I can't swim against the tide anymore, Georgios. It's too exhausting.
Well, don't swim. Stand. You're a rock. Well, you're boulder. Well, maybe pebble.
I'm going to shave my head, Georgios, and I'm going to kick the disadvantaged. Hey, it works. It works.
Well, what you mean disadvantage? You mean like morally handicapped? Because that I agree with.
No, the problem is the only way to get on in the world anymore is to be morally handicapped.
No, I don't think that's true.
You know, that man who invented the plasters, who's now in the White House. He made his money from the plasters.
Oh, wait. It's Lucifer's butthole Bannon.
Steve Band-Aid.
Oh, Steve Bender, yeah.
You know, he made all that money from plasters, and now he's ruling the world from his racist stronghold in a Washington Dick clasp, which is what I assume the DC stands for.
I think most of Washingtonians would probably agree. No, I think, no, it's fine. I mean, I think the main argument nowadays is, can you prove without a doubt that he's actually racist? Because, that's not how it works.
Well, I mean, it's clear to me that if you make what are obvious racist comments, not only through your media platform,
right,
but also just on the street.
Yeah.
You know, you kick a lamppost and go, "Oh, you bloody bastard," right? I edited out the racial epithets from there because I'm not comfortable saying them, right?
No. The last time I said a racial epithet, I was reading something.
But the thing is, right?
Yes.
If you do that, I mean, both in print and in public.
Right.
Well, there's obviously some doubt, isn't there?
Yes.
There's some doubt whether you're a racist.
You mean, pulling somebody, you mean lynching someone might be taken out of context.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And they all have sort of big shoulder issues.
Yes.
So their arms.
Too many chips on them.
Involuntarily sort of shoot out straight in front of their body, pointing to the sky.
It's the only way you get rid of that chip on your shoulder.
I mean, these people, we should feel sorry for them. Their fucking chiropractor bills are through the roof, Georgios. Trying to fix this.
I think we have established that they have a very, very dark heart, and no, I can't feel sorry for them.
It's called the strange love syndrome.
The strange love.
They've all got the strange love syndrome.
Mein Führer, I can walk.
They've all got.
Unfortunately, they can walk. Yeah.
Unfortunately, and talk.
And talk. Yeah.
And think.
No, they can't do that.
And some of them, unfortunately, have been given the vote. Georgios.
Yes. Well, that's not the problem. The problem is basically that we didn't cave their faces in when we should.
Well, this is the thing. Not that I'm.
Oh, actually, I take that back because it sounds like I'm advocating violence.
That's right.
I'm supporting violence against them. I'm not advocating it. Yeah, which I don't think is much better, but, maybe I haven't quite reached my equilibrium yet.
Well, no, the point is, not that I'm advocating disenfranchising certain people from the democratic process. I just don't think they should be able to vote.
Yeah, I mean, philosophically speaking, or generally speaking, it's quite a conundrum in that how do you deal with something that's quite literally social cancer without cutting off your own limbs? I think once we've found a way to beat cancer without using chemotherapy, I think we can beat them.
That's right. So if there was ever going to be any science in the next 4 years, we might do it, but there won't, so...
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's...
How come our bent is always political and then we talk about games? It's very weird.
Well, let's talk about games.
Yes,
let's remove ourselves from the disgusting hullabaloo that is our current world, Georgios, and go back to the past.
Ah, yes, the past. I mean, isn't that kind of the problem, this desire to go to the past?
But a nice past.
Let's learn about where we come from truthfully and see how it affects the present and hopefully the future.
I'm sort of thinking more J.R.R. Tolkien, less Ayn Rand. You know what I mean, Georgios?
Yes. Go on.
Anyway, so what we're talking about this week is we're going to go through our memory banks.
Yes.
Similar to the wank bank, just a bit less sexy.
Well, speak for yourself.
And we're going to go through and talk about some moments in our gaming history that...
Historia ludogique.
That's, he speaks all the languages.
I speak all the languages at the same time.
And I'm going to get to the end of this précis of what we're doing at some point.
It's not so much a précis as a long, rambling prologue.
Well, it's long and bloody rambling because when I get 3 bloody words into the sentence, you interrupt me.
Yes, I do.
I mean, with glorious accents.
Glorious.
No question. I mean, they're rendered perfectly. But give me 10 seconds. I'll do this in 10 seconds.
Okay, go on.
Then you're allowed...
I'm counting. I'm holding up my fingers and counting. And go.
So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about memories that have reinforced our love of playing games and why they're important and when they happened and that.
Well, that's not bad. It's almost 10 seconds, yeah. Well
Georgios.
done. Yes, Ben.
So let's talk about, give us a memory, give us a recollection, a thought, something that has reinforced your love.
Actually,
that was very sexy then. Do you think?
Yes.
Do you think?
So much the you see again? You were trying to separate the wank bank from the memory bank, and I'm saying that doesn't work.
But I've got a glorious, sexy, silky voice of testicular voluptuousness.
All right. So if we did ever have female listeners, I do think we have a few female listeners. I think right now they're creeped out. I mean, I'm creeped out.
Creeped out.
And I'm like 20% female.
Creeped out or the most turned on they've ever been. You say potato.
You say sexual lawsuit. Yeah. Harassment lawsuit.
Go.
Yeah.
Give us a memory.
Yeah. So I sat down and looked at all the memories as sort of not the highlights, but sort of the forming experiences of why I'm so passionate about gaming, passionate enough to do a podcast about it, passionate enough to have pursued this for the last maybe 10 years. Consciously, not just, side thing that you do. So my first forming memory regarding games is when I'm, I think, about 6 or 7 years old. I played a game with a friend. Well, it's a complicated family history, friends of my mother's and blah, blah, blah.
Well, you Southern Europeans, you have big families.
Yes, we do. So they're not so much families. I think she was no. This is the son of my godmother. That's the one. So we sat down and played this game. Now, if I were the kind of person who cares about how they come across and about my geek cred, I would have slightly smudged the dates, flipped it around and said, of course, I played Hero Quest, the geekiest of games that is so very, very cool and intense and so much role-playing and fantastic. But the truth is, it was not Hero Quest that started this enjoyment with games. It was something far less cool. It was Hotels, which is a ripoff of Monopoly, basically, but with fancy buildings on it. So Monopoly, I hated whenever I played it. But Hotels, with 7 or 8 years old, I loved. Because Hotels, you put these cardboard buildings on the board. When you put them together before you start playing, and back then, we're talking about the late 80s now, they were fantastic. They were so beautiful to look at. You have the presidential area with like long skyscrapers. You had the opening hotel, which was called a Boomerang, which was like a slightly curved, huge building. And then later on, you have the Waikiki, which is about, apparently Hawaiian straw huts or something, or huts with straw.
Racism.
Yeah, basically racism, yeah. Let's call it, it's not quite racism so much as it is
cultural appropriation.
Exoticism. There was a Japanese hotel chain and so on. Some of them basically, whenever you build, you first buy the property and then you build a building, you place it on the board, and then you build another building, place it on the board, and sort of expands, becomes more luxurious. And if you've maxed out the buildings, you can add a park area. So it's really, really pretty looking. And I remember really, really enjoying these games. I think I might have won some, I might have lost some. It's not a good game. It really isn't. It's okay. At best, it's okay. But I remember just, having these toys in there. At this point, it seemed opulent compared to other games that were out there. Games like Monopoly, which is paper money and a board. There was Mad the Board Game, which was very, very silly. It still gives me a chuckle, some of these jokes. But it was a silly, simple board game. And something like Hotel or Hotels, I think, in the US and the UK. And now I think it's been re-released as Hotel Tycoon with a lot of plastic buildings. And I feel it looks like crap. I remember this game, playing it, and just this mixture of play and game and toy, basically. And the way it looked, it was so exciting to just to just build these buildings, to just make them bigger, and just putting a lot of stuff on the board was just fun. And I remember, this is something I enjoy. This is something I want to do more of. I want to see if there are more games like this. And eventually, there came games like Hero Quest, which had even more stuff on them. And there were other games as well, which, of course, neatly I've now forgotten. But I think Hotel was one of the first games I played when I was, 7, 8 years old. And thinking back and going, this is really fun. This isn't like the other games I remember. This is just playing this game itself was just fun.
Yeah, board games. I mean, the thing is, I don't have one of these stories.
Right. Because you're a hanger-on, right? You're like a fake gamer.
Yeah, no, I'm a famer. Because board games are ubiquitous. Mm-hmm. Whether they be Monopoly Life, I did play Hero Quest as a kid in the 80s. I don't remember anything about it, actually. But they're ubiquitous. Board games were always this thing that you do when you've got nothing else to do, right?
Yeah.
So my first memory feeds back into that opening up of my consciousness to what modern games are. Mm-hmm. And mine is a very hoary old traditional one.
Right.
That has opened the doors for so many people, but nevertheless, when I played this, it was inevitable that I was going to fall in love with this thing and be surrounded by these things. If you look at this room, I look like a fucking hoarder. And this
it would work if you just cleaned up once in a while.
That's true.
It's the same with me.
I got Pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I played it with some friends who then subsequently didn't become gamers. Firstly, it was that notion of a co-op game.
Right, yeah.
Which was just something completely new to me. I didn't realise this thing existed. And it appealed great. This idea that you don't have to chop off other people's legs to achieve what you want. You can work together. And it's also very much like my computer gaming as a kid, where you sit and you play Mario. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to beat Mario and you're playing with your mate and you get a go and then you die and they get a go and that sort of thing. And it fed into that. And I think the reason Pandemic, we were talking about this before we started recording, shortly after we,
got drunk.
Yeah. And we were talking about co-op games and whether people like to be beaten viciously by co-op games. And we came to the conclusion, I think we both came to the conclusion that a co-op game needs to allow you into it. You need a feeling of agency.
Oh yeah.
Otherwise, if you just walk in straight into a brick wall, you're never going to enjoy it because you're never allowed to do anything. You're never allowed to play around within the mechanical world of the game, right?
Right, yeah.
It's just boom, 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 boom. And level design is a big thing, I think, in games in general and co-op games certainly. And Pandemic has this wonderful way of escalating and then diminishing and then escalating even further and then diminishing a little bit and escalating and escalating and escalating. And so it allows you into the game, but it gives you challenge from the beginning. You play this, and I remember sitting around with these friends of mine playing it, and there was just this feeling of, wow, this is great. This is engaging. This is engaging the cerebellum without the need of external stimulants.
Right, yeah.
I don't need to go out and get drunk necessarily. I can just do something that is stimulating and invigorating, and you come out with that sort of warm feeling inside your stomach. And Pandemic really offered that to me. And that first time where we sat and we played 4 games in a row, and that is sort of the reason I'm here. It's that indelible kind of thing that imprinted itself on my brain. And now it's inevitable that I'm into it, because I think once you're bitten by a bug in that way, it's very difficult to get rid of it, right?
Yeah, and to some extent I at least don't want to get rid of it. I don't want to lose this passion for board games. I don't want to lose this passion for what the board gaming experience can be like.
Well, the thing is, you become hoary and old and cynical and all of this sort of stuff, Once you've played a lot of games.
Right, yeah.
You get that, I've seen this before. No. And I think it's important every so often. I think Innis offered this to me this year.
All right.
Our review game this week did this. A game I'm going to talk about later in this section did this. You do play a lot of games that are the same. I mean, and that you think, this is of a standard that's fine, it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
Then occasionally you just get that thing that just reinvigorates you. You get
Exactly,
the butterflies in the tummy and you think, this is a great piece of art. And that's what keeps you going, I think.
Oh, no, I agree. I think, I don't know how many episodes we're away from an end of the year episode where we talk about our games of the year, but those are definitely the experiences I'm going to go back to this year and go about. This is a game that I like the word invigorates me or reinvigorated me and sort of reminded me why I'm passionate about these games. I'm always doing a segue now because, interesting enough, I had this lull between Hotel in the end of the 80s and when I rediscovered as a, I don't want to say grown man because I'm not sure I am quite there yet.
You've never achieved that goal, have you?
No, probably not. But I was legally an adult at that point. I mean, I've been so for a few years.
There are so many people who are. Yeah. Some of them run the biggest democracy on the planet.
Yes. You don't see the air quotes, but you can probably hear them. You know, but the game that sort of brought me back in, neatly the game I forgot to mention when I almost mentioned to the wrong designer when we were in Essen. But there were two games that sort of I played around the same time. I can't really figure out which, I can't really pinpoint which one came first. One of them was Citadels and the other one was Shadows over Camelot. More or less the same time in my recollection, at least. I might be wrong by maybe up to 4 years, but I don't know. They both did more or less the same thing. This experience when I sat down and played them and then it was done, there was this new level of gameplay that I suddenly experienced. Before then, I had played games before. I even enjoyed them even. I played something like Zombies, which is literally not a good game, but it had a lot of stuff in it. And back then, I kind of was fine with just having a game with a lot of stuff in it. But I played Citadels. Let's start with Citadels because it's a better case of what I'm going for here. If you know Citadels, basically you have this kind of drafting mechanic where you take a few cards, pick one roll you want, then you pass it on, giving you some sort of information about which cards are out, which cards have been taken and are now inhabited by one of the other players, and which cards are still in the deck and might have to be taken up by somebody else later in the turn order. And the great thing about this is that it makes you try to figure out what everybody else is thinking. It sort of makes you get into the head of other people. And this was something that just wasn't on my radar until I played this game. I mean, with other games, you roll your dice, you move your things around, you sort of play the card you can, blah, blah, blah. But with Citadels, the first time I realized, all right, I'm trying to figure out how other people are thinking. And this opened up this huge, vast dimension of gaming to me that I still love to this day, that hasn't diminished at any point. The idea of me needing or wanting to understand other people.
Well, it's that difference. It's that time when a game transfers from being a distraction, something nice to do, into an actual task that is solvable and engaging.
Yeah, there's definitely that. But I think again, our viewpoints sort of manifest themselves here. To me, what drew me in was not necessarily the task, but the fact that I'm really deeply invested in other people at this point. Sure, it's a superficial investment in that I'm trying to figure out what you want and I'm trying to sort of outmaneuver you or maybe put up defenses so you can't, work against me. This really excited me. And this is sort of why I'm also bringing up Shadows over Camelot at this point, because Shadows over Camelot is a co-op game. Because of the way, I mean, this is one of the first wave of co-op games that came out. There was still sort of, at this point, communication rules were still a bit of an issue. What can't you say? What can you say? And when the game worked for us well, it was all about figuring out who is really on your side, who is honest, who is really trying to help, and who is sort of subtly manipulating you, trying to screw things up for you. Who is the traitor amongst you? No, having to think about the mindset of other people, I just find exciting. The idea of just understanding where they're coming from, understanding what they want and how they want to achieve it, and why they might make choices that you yourself wouldn't make because you don't see them as being the right choice, so to speak. That's exciting to me. That's essential to what I consider a satisfying gaming experience. The idea of when I played this game, I somehow understand you a little better. Not in a way of like, I don't necessarily know your past. I don't know your emotional landscape so much, but I try to figure out the way you think. And when I feel like I understand you a bit better, I know how you gauge risks.
I don't know your
risks you take.
I don't know your past, but I'm gauging your present, which is informing me about your future.
In a way, yes.
What you're going to do 5 minutes from now, based on the evidence I have.
But I do remember, like around this time, I was thinking a lot about this idea of how we express ourselves when we game, And I've moved away from this idea of that the way we game is how we truly are, because the certain social rules are sort of falling away, things we've learned how to cover up certain things. I used to believe that watching somebody play a game gives you a deeper insight in who they are as a person. I don't believe that anymore. But something I did learn from that time when I really paid attention was that you do see people react to certain stimuli. How people react to frustration, to victory, how they react to risks, how they react to confrontation, if they do avoid confrontation, how do they do that? If they are people who are planning long-term or short-term, it does give you sort of glimpses into this person. And I still feel, the one thing I haven't really budged on from back then is that it tells you a lot about a person, how they deal with frustration, with losses, and how they deal with victories. There are few people who I've stopped gaming with because of the unbearable way they dealt with victories.
Absolutely. I slightly disagree with you in that I can deal with people being dicks after they've won. I can deal with the smugness pretty much. Mm-hmm. And I think what's interesting is that I think the euphoria of victory is actually very short-lived.
Sure, yeah.
I think it's not infinitesimal, but I think the glow of winning doesn't last longer than about 5 minutes. My objection is the more usual one, which is how people deal with misfortune, how people deal with loss, because that lasts longer and it tends to be more vitriolic and people tend to get more angry. And I can deal with smugness. Rage quitting, I have a real problem with.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, to follow up on that, I think, again, we differ here in that I'm not entirely sure that victory isn't that long lasting. I think you're very quickly become a step out of this mode where winning matters.
I do hate myself though, so I have that initial glow, and then I realize it's probably because others made mistakes and I didn't do it myself.
Yeah, no, yes. I always feel a bit. I agree with that point that, you know, if you feel like the victory you've achieved is only happened because somebody else made a mistake, it sort of undercuts it. But I do feel that both winning and losing doesn't really last. They don't differ in how long they last after the game is over. With winning, you quickly realize that during the game, winning mattered to you. When the game is over, winning stops mattering to you, which is normal, which is healthy. But the joy of having won, even though it's subtle, I think it does carry me over for a while.
But I think what you're talking about is the grace.
Right.
With which you approach both situations, right?
Right.
So if I win, I dance around and but it's clear I'm mucking around, right?
Yeah.
It's clear I'm having a laugh. There are certain people, and I brought this up in other shows, like the guy we played Blood Rage.
Right.
And he explained the rules and none of the way to play the game.
Yeah.
And then he completely leveraged our lack of knowledge about the game to wipe the floor with us unremittingly.
Yeah.
And then sat there looking as if he'd just invented a cure for cancer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's an objectionable way to win.
Definitely. I think I have this, I remember this one moment where we played with this one guy who we used to play with a lot. He came by to gloat about his new job. But
hey,
no,
being a chicken inseminator is a hell of a job.
That is true.
I brag about it too. You get to touch chickens' vaginas all the day through.
That's quite enviable. That's true.
Interestingly though, chicken vaginas taste like chicken.
That's neither interesting nor surprising.
Excellent.
Anyway, so basically the moment I remember is that we were playing Letters from Whitechapel, and at some point, I think it was Fury of Dracula, and at some point somebody made a move that sort of cut off an option for Dracula in some way. And the way he did it was with so much malice in his voice. For no apparent reason, he started cursing at this friend of ours who just happened to playing the opposite part. I was like, and he was just so full of energy about it. He was so excited about, having, stopped a move from Dracula. And I thought, no, I'm sorry, I can't deal with this kind of person in my gaming room. I can't deal with this kind of person.
You've revealed the ugly underbelly of the human nature.
Of his, yes. But I think it's a sense of respect that if you sit down to play with friends, you don't treat them like shit because you happened to luck out on a game. And this is basically one thing I learned. Like, as much as I love getting into people's heads, it has on occasion led me to see, or at least to feel like I have an insight into an aspect of a person that makes me that made me uncomfortable to play games with them again.
I'm going to go on.
Yes, go on.
And I want to talk about, it's a small little anecdote, but it's sometimes you have these game systems, and the game systems, when it's a good game, the game system works.
Right.
But rarely is the game system stretched to almost breaking point, but you just stop before you break the game system.
Right.
And it results in this just glorious result that makes everyone around the table go, that was amazing. And because usually life is prosaic.
No.
Life is a series of very short, exciting moments that punctuate long stretches of normality, right? So the game I'm talking about is Skull, right?
All right. Mm-hmm.
And Skull is usually always fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it very rarely has these moments where the game system is stretched and you're able to actually do what the designers truly envisage, right?
Right.
Because sensibleness kicks in.
Okay.
You know that if you have to turn over, you know that if you've just bid 6 and someone's just bid 7, probably don't bid 8.
Yeah.
Because it's probably not going to work. Even though you believe that the person there, sensibleness kicks in. Common sense kicks in and you go, no, you do it. It's far too risky.
See, I firmly believe that common sense is the enemy of good gaming.
But it's an absolute fundamental human trait.
Yeah.
And you can't avoid it, right?
Possibly, yeah.
But we played this one game of Skull, and it went round, and then we started bidding, and everyone fell away, and there was just me and one guy.
Right.
And I did all the mugging and the pretending to think, and I knew I had a skull right in front of me, and I bid up to 7. And I was, running my fingers through my hair and looking at him and going, I know you've got one there, you bastard. Look at the position you've put me in. This is unbelievable. And doing all of this and stretching it out and pulling it. And everyone else was sitting around and looking, and everyone hushed and was quiet. And then I just looked at him straight in the eyes and I went, 8. And then he looked at me and his eyes widened. And he said, there's no chance you've got skulls in front of you. I'm feeling really good about this.
Right.
And he went, 9. And I went, go on then. And he turned over my first card. And it was a skull. And everybody erupted around the table because I'd done what the game was truly designed to do. I'd reeled him in to such a degree. I compelled him so much. I mean, it's the best acting performance I've ever given. I compelled him so much.
And the retelling as well.
Indeed. With my distracting tactics and my obvious, although fake, anguish that I'd done what the game in its perfect iteration is supposed to do, right? And it was such a moment of leveraging that game system to its glorious acme that it's indelibly branded onto my cerebellum. You know what I mean? It's just one of those...
You do like your words, don't you?
I do. It's just one of those moments that I just think, this is where it lives.
Right, yeah.
And I play a lot of games, and mostly they're good. Rarely they're that, though. And it's those moments that propel you on through the next subsequent 2 months of fine games,
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I definitely, these moments are sort of, that you look back on and they just keep feeding, giving you this energy to sit down for another game, they sort of feed this hunger. They don't feed this hunger, they generate this hunger in you for another game like this, for this rush, for this intensity, for this great experience of, in my case, of just, being with people and enjoying something together, having a moment.
Sometimes you forget kimchi fries exist, right?
What's that?
You go to work, you come home, you have pasta and vegetables. You go to work, you come home, you have a baked potato or something. You go to work, you come home, you have beans on toast, and it's fine. And it's not that you don't enjoy your dinner.
Right.
But it's fine. And then, every so often you go, right, we'll go and have something. And you go to this Korean restaurant and they have kimchi fries with their special sauce, and you eat it and you just go, oh, this is what food is, right? And what that does is that keeps you having faith to eat food. That sounds really stupid. But,
No, it sounds brilliant.
But, otherwise you just go, oh, fuck it, I'll just have pasta and tomato sauce every bloody day. Because what's the point, I mean, it does the same as this.
Yeah.
And this is the point. It invigorates you and it gives you that energy to push you on through. And that's, that is a very strong memory for me and will always stick with me because it was one of those moments that I thought, yeah, this is why I do this. Because it has that possibility. That possibility always lives.
All right. That actually quite works with my next point, and I'm going to cheat a bit because we had to cut it down. I'm going to smush a bunch of games together, a bunch of experiences together.
Always pull the curtain back.
Yes, I
do. Joss. Have you not read The Wizard of Oz?
No. I've seen YouTube clips. That counts, right?
Yeah, that tiger.
I remember this old guy screaming in a bunker, and there were subtitles.
It's like 3 paedophiles. Like one's a tiger, one's cosplaying a Cylon. And the other's a dog or something.
Probably.
And they're with this little girl, and they're taking her to this palace or something.
All right. That does sound like some horror fiction I might have heard of. Anyway, yes, I do not believe in curtains. That is true. I always undress in front of my window to intimidate the neighbors. So the last indelible experience, the last great experience I've had with game was comparatively recent, like a few years back only. Again, it sort of instilled this new desire in me, or not this new desire, but just sort of focused something I love about gaming and made me realize just how important it is to me. And that was the unexpectedness of where a game can go. The moments, these surprises that sort of pop up on you, that sort of seem to come out of nowhere. And all of a sudden you go, wow, this is possible. This can be done. And it's not just, this is a game that's completely innovative and does something different. That's not really what I mean. I'm thinking of a game like Battlestar Galactica, or even the Game of Thrones second edition game, and Cosmic Encounter. And I'm going to come back to Cosmic Encounter in a second. But those games, basically, I played them, and then something happened during the game that just took me by surprise, fundamentally took me by surprise. And it's not like in a Settlers of Catan when somebody suddenly reveals, oh, I have this card which gives me 2 extra victory points. We go like, oh shit, I lost. It's more like you have, in Battlestar Galactica specifically, you have this complex set of rules that you're maneuvering within. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to take care of this, and you're thinking this guy might be a Cylon, or this guy might be a Cylon, and you keep playing and things happen, and then you have this reveal, and then all of a sudden, whether you win or lose or whatever, somebody turns out to be the Cylon that you didn't think of even in the slightest.
Right.
Completely took you by surprise, completely blindsided. And the same feeling I had with Game of Thrones as well, where you're arguing, where you're discussing things, where you're trying to make treaties and allies, and all of a sudden something happens that you didn't see coming. It doesn't even have to affect you yourself. It's just somebody on the other end of the map all of a sudden turning on somebody going, oh wow, this changes everything. Now this alliance doesn't work, and this space is now open for attack, and now I can do this, and he's definitely going to do that. And it just seems to, all of a sudden, my brain seems to just unfold into all these possibilities. All of a sudden it goes, whoosh, everything is possible now. And these sudden reveals are so exciting to me. They are so much fun, and I'm actually destroying the interior here while I'm talking.
He just punched me in the face.
I do.
I'm just such a professional. I didn't react.
More or less, yeah. And the reason why I brought up Cosmic Encounter as well is that it does these things in a smaller scale and at a far higher frequency. And this is why I'm going to cheat. I'm bringing up another experience which I had, which also made me love another aspect of the game. Cosmic Encounter, I was given a copy for free by somebody who emigrated from Germany over to Canada. He gave me this copy. He didn't have room for it. He just gave it for free. You like games. You enjoyed. I've played it once. Everybody keeps telling me it's a great game. And we played it once, and I was like, ooh, that's weird. That's a bit, the rules are complicated. I can't figure out what I'm supposed to do. I don't see how things are going to work. I keep having to look up rules and I don't understand them. But somewhere inside, I could sort of see, like, in the midst of this game experience, I thought, there's something in there. I don't know what it is, but something in there, something that's working. Everybody keeps telling me it's a great game. There's something in there. So I played it again. And it was a little bit better, but again, people going, oh, I don't know, this is a bit weird. And I think it was the 4th or 5th time I played the game where it clicked. The moment where I kept going, then I sat down and played it. and we laughed, and there were surprises every other turn. Something happened that nobody saw coming. This happened and this happened, and you were thinking, you were planning, you were plotting what to do next and who to invite, and all of a sudden somebody else plays this card, and somebody else plays that card, and you again see this potential in the game. You see the options, you see everything that the game could be, and it carries this potential with you in each turn, and all of a sudden it explodes into this moment of like, oh, this is possible. You just stole everything from this guy, and it's hilarious, and it's so much fun, and you're already you're reeling from the reveal, and then it's the next turn already, and you're trying to figure out how to position yourself, which card to play, which to hold on to, and this just, again, the idea of a gaming experience being invigorating, being exciting, sort of grabbing you by whatever part of the body that you feel is most delicate, and just not letting go.
And this is why, when I hear people say, there are so many games out there, and if you play a game once and it doesn't jive with you, well, move on to the next one, because the next one will. This is why I don't have faith in this statement whatsoever.
No.
So many games I've played. Last Will is an example. I played that 3 times and didn't like it once. On the 4th time, everything came together, and now it's one of my favourite games.
Yeah.
And if I'd have gone by that credo of, if it doesn't work, well, then move on, I would have denied myself that wonderful experience. And, having something there that I know I can crack into and enjoy every time. And so you need to give things chances.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes board games are like albums, right? You buy an album, you listen to it, and you go, man, I'm not sure. By the 4th time you've listened to it, it's your best bloody album. And, every time you listen to it, a new song is your favourite. And it's like these with games. Sometimes it takes some time to get into them.
I agree.
But then different aspects are different. Different aspects are more enjoyable, and different aspects give you that unquantifiable mojo that really great games give you. And to deny yourself that just because there are lots of games out there, well, that's undeniable.
Oh, no, I agree. I think that's why I in the last months, I think since we started the show, I realized just how important accessibility is for a game. Because you want to shorten the distance between, this is the first time I'm placing this game on the table, and now I figured out what this game is. Regardless of whether you enjoy it or whether it's fun, but I feel you need at some point to sort of sit down, play the game, realize, all right, I'm looking straight into the core of what this game offers. And then I can decide if it's for me or if it isn't. There are some games that I've played 2 or 3 times, and I realized I understand this game. I know what it's about. I know what it provides. I know they're fans of it. It just isn't for me, and that's fine. It's perfect. But I agree with you. Playing it once and just because it didn't work, you just go, nah, I don't care. There are a bunch of other games. I think that's a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? It's dismissive in a way that sort of ignores just how much joy is buried within games.
And none of this hippie bullshit about you should respect the person and their creative venture. No, I mean, some people are they create things that are crap, right?
Yeah,
and
sure.
They should be told. But it's denying yourself the possibility of something great. Mm-hmm. And that is short-sighted in my eyes.
I agree, yeah.
Okay, Georgios, so...
Yes.
After that trawl through memory lane...
I feel so much older now.
I'm going to go and destroy my memory capacity by banging my head against a wall that has Steve Bannon's face on it.
Oh, well, I'd rather, why don't you punch it or kick it? It's much more, freeing.
I love the self-destruction.
The well-bred contradict other people. The wise contradict themselves. Oscar Wilde said that. I'm T.C. Petty III, and this is Deep Design with T.C. Petty III. For the love of intuition. I think intuitive is a word that gets too much credit. People are starting to use it all the time when describing games. Who the hell does intuitive think it is anyway? Being so concrete and understandable. It didn't always work this way. Back in my day, the dictionary definition of intuitive was pure as snow. The word intuitive has been bastardized by developers and game designers from its origins as gut feelings to applying it to activities that convey meaning without instruction. It's still kind of the same thing, but nowadays if you were to say, she's a really intuitive woman, I wouldn't know whether you meant she's like Sherlock Holmes or she's touch-sensitive with easily detectable hotspots that provide appropriate haptic and visual feedback upon manipulation. Like they say, bitches be having dynamic and adaptive user experience modulations, yo. So, now intuitive means that players can deduce meaning in your game through the iconography used, thematic cohesion with mechanics, and straightforward rules that govern gameplay and are consistent even across several mechanics within the same system. It sounds like a lot, but just like the old meaning of intuitive, when something is intuitive, you feel it deep in your belly, like a pancake or motor oil. But where's the mystique and wonder in the modern definition of intuitive? If everything was straightforward and easy to understand initially, we wouldn't have challenge or difficulty or tension. Every game would be Uno or dominoes. There would be no double thinking, no metagaming. All things would be lumped into black and white analogies for easy understanding. Everyone would listen to electronic pop music with lyrics that directly appealed to the most basic human functions. It'd be almost like we're living in a world where first impressions are the most important and superficial labels define our scope of interactions with people. But we don't live in that world, right? Alright, we live in that world, but it doesn't fucking matter because you don't want that. You're looking for something else, something elevated, something fun with a satisfying finish, something uplifting, yet grounded, that challenges your beliefs and feels... Whatever. We're going to talk about counterintuitive mechanics today and how you can use them to make your games more better. Counterintuitive mechanics, or unintuitive or counterproductive mechanics versus counterintuitive mechanics. It's easy to reminisce about the good old days because anytime you were happy, you were ignorant and oblivious. If something was easy, it probably wasn't substantial or worth doing. It may be semantics, but I don't care. There's a distinction between something that is unintuitive or counterproductive and something that is counterintuitive. Unintuitive mechanics deal with situations where the mechanic either doesn't do a good job of abstractly representing a thematic situation, or is just confusing or misleading until further explained. Counterproductive mechanics are options that might even appear to have a positive effect on a player, but are actually bad or short-term positives that can trap players. Or sometimes they're just a shitty option. So what I'm talking about today certainly overlaps with both of these ideas. Counterintuitive mechanics are mechanics with inherent contradictions. This is different from a negative feedback loop like recurring costs for cards or having to feed your people. Those systems certainly work against your main goals, but in many cases, they are intuitive and thematic in themselves. Counterintuitive mechanics are different in that the action you take to progress forward is actively detrimental to your progress forward. If that sounds counterintuitive, you're right. For example, how does a person get better at something? They practice it. If you create a game where practicing is important to progression, however, the more you practice, the more difficult it becomes to progress, then players have to balance how much they practice versus how much they make forward progression. Honestly, role-playing video games don't do this, and they really should. So, to progress, players just need to endlessly and casually grind against lesser enemies. Grinding is so well integrated into players' expectations that entire games are made based on grinding against enemies to level up character stat and tech trees. It's fatiguing. Like that example, counterintuitive mechanics are the foundation for creating clever games. If someone says, "Oh, that's clever," or if the new Kramer-Kiesling game has "clever" displayed on the box cover, it's usually because of this. And it's Kramer-Kiesling, and if you know Kramer-Kiesling, if you fall behind, you just suck and you fucking lose. How clever. Like a really smart person just said about a minute ago, it's easy to reminisce about the good old days because anytime you were happy, you were ignorant and oblivious. If something was easy, it probably wasn't substantial or worth doing. That's a really smart and insightful point, TC. If something is intuitive, it lacks depth. If something is unintuitive, it lacks accessibility. If something is counterintuitive, it better make itself apparent before the first game is complete, unless it's a really fucking short game, or players will become frustrated and move on to the next game. Japanese microgames thrive on the depth of experience that is created over several plays. In many cases, the main driving mechanic of gameplay obscures the intent of the game, and this can be successful if the game is tight and simple. Counterintuitive mechanics are what can cause nice eureka moments for players. Let's take a look at some examples. The reason I started down this esoteric rabbit hole was because of the video game Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Because it has one really interesting counterintuitive mechanic. The only way to hide from monsters is to hide in the dark. The more darkness you're exposed to, the more insane you become. The only way to regain sanity is to progress and complete puzzles. So you have to balance hiding from monsters with progress forward, because either way, if you have too much, you die. It was such a simple idea, but it finally made fear into a tangible mechanic that players need to overcome, and it can really manipulate the way that you play the game. So in the game Dark Souls, there's a concept called humanity. By gaining humanity, you are slightly more powerful, you can summon friends, and you get better item drops. But you can also be invaded by other players. You become more powerful by putting a big target on your back. So let's jump into the world of board games with The Grizzled, because I think two counterintuitive mechanics are going at the same time, hand in hand here. The point of The Grizzled is to win by running the piece deck out of cards and playing all cards in players' hands. The problem is, to get rid of cards in your hand, you have to make the mission worse for every player by playing them face up on the table. And at the beginning of the round, the leader has to decide how many cards everybody's going to draw, because at the end of the round, you count up how many cards are left over in all players' hands that they couldn't play to the mission, and add that many cards from another deck to the piece deck, making it harder to complete. So the more you draw at the beginning, the closer you are to completing the piece deck, but the more cards you have to add to the piece pile if you fail. So in Welcome to the Dungeon, which is a Japanese microgame, players are vying to take control of the one hero with equipment that is going to be sent into a dungeon. If they're ever successful at sending a hero through a dungeon twice, they win. So the idea is, on your turn, you can either pass, which takes you out of the round, or you can draw a card. The last person to pass has to take the hero through the dungeon with whatever equipment it has left and try to fight all the monsters in it. So your turn is basically drawing a card, looking at it, seeing what type of monster it is, and either deciding to place it into the dungeon or place it in front of you and steal a piece of equipment from the hero. So the counterintuitive part is you're making the challenge harder for all players, even yourself, by staying in the round. But if you pass and another player succeeds, they are closer to winning.
Practical applications.
So when should you use counterintuitive mechanics? When you need more internal conflict. Counterintuitive mechanics give players an immediate negative consequence to certain actions that they need to consider. For games with a lot of player interaction, it's good to have one element of pushback that has nothing to do with other players. This personal dilemma makes the tension feel more real. When a playtester says, there's just something missing, it's usually because there's a clever twist missing, not necessarily an entirely new mechanic needed. Think of games where, as you expand, you need more resources to keep that expansion alive. I'm not saying it's directly applicable, but the missing something here is usually because an inherent obstacle or restriction on the main goal is missing or uninteresting. And of course, when you have no aha moment, no here comes the boom, ready or not moment in the rules explanation. Counterintuitive mechanics add a little extra pizzazz to your game. When should you avoid counterintuitive mechanics? So, I just blasted the concept of intuitive, but I'll admit, it's kinda good to have rules that make sense and are easily learned, I guess. Easily understood. In board gaming, these are actions, game boards, cards, symbols, basically anything that closely ties theme with a mechanism, or creates a series of abstract concepts that are all carried out in the same way or with very easily understood variations. Elegance, or eliminating extraneous exceptions, can really aid with the intuitive nature of a game. For example, a concept like investment, paying money to make more money later, is only intuitive to us because we're used to it. At first, the idea of spending our own money without receiving a bartering good in return is strange and foreign. Once we see it in action, though, we're already too late and the top 1% control the world. But let's just first list some big areas where you should avoid initially confusing players. Graphic design, your rulebook, and the goal of the game or endgame scoring. It's not fun to, quote, discover the meaning of a counter or unintuitive symbol. At that point, it boils down to memorization, rarely a fun game element. Or if the layout of a board doesn't follow a logical flow of information, it's frustrating. And the rulebook, well, listen to some previous episodes because we've already went over that. And super importantly, if a player doesn't understand the goal of the game or how endgame scoring or some final epic turn twist to gameplay works, they're left with an extremely sour taste in their mouth. A first impression of a board or card game is not just what it looks like on the shelf or how cool it looks on the table, it's the entire experience. If it ends like comically stepping on a metal portion of a rake with the blunt handle slapping the player in the face, it may be cute for those watching, but that player is moving on to the next game forever. But from a gameplay perspective, if your game already has significant downtime between turns, avoid or cut counterintuitive mechanics. Downsides to every positive action just makes the decision process longer. And be careful because some of them can become annoying or overused. Paying victory points to take actions triggers loss aversion in many people. Allowing players to take loans can become mathy and dominate an otherwise interesting system. The more counterintuitive mechanics you pile on top of each other, the more unintuitive your game becomes. Use them sparingly, and when used, use them to monumental effect. And finally, Be wary of false intuition. When I say counterintuitive, I don't mean falsely intuitive. The worst thing you can ever do is falsely represent intuition to a player. For example, if a symbol looks like you draw 2 cards, but you actually draw 2 cards and then discard 1, fix it. Or if players take an explore action by placing a building in a nearby city and gaining $2. I mean, I guess that's exploring, but does it sound like it? Nope. In playtesting, this is easy to catch. A player keeps trying to do an action incorrectly or forgets the proper steps. When I'm playtesting, I really like to let the designer know any points where I was like, I thought this thing would do this one thing, and then it did this other thing. If you're the designer, make sure to ask players if there were any actions they misinterpreted or kept getting confused over. It's helpful. If you live with freedom all your life, you expect it. If it doesn't affect you directly, you neglect it. It takes some guy who doesn't have it to respect it, to be willing to fight and die for the right to protect it. The concept of pride is so innately counterintuitive. Progress and ingenuity stems from outside influences, and if you sit on the side watching white nationalism ruin us, if the legacy of the US is being assholes, that's on you and us. Sorry, I've been listening to a lot of Hamilton lately. Intuition may have evolved into a new definition over the last 15 years, and that's okay. Even though intuitive is an awesome word to describe how we interpret these pretty pieces in art and recognize their functions within a game, and now I have to use counterintuitive to describe the same things that could have been called intuition years ago, it's given us a better understanding of how the human brain works. Strive for elegance, but shoot for cleverness and contradiction. Games are better when they challenge us, and this cognitive dissonance is what excites our brain. A brain that deteriorates just as we finally grow old enough to appreciate the value of the intuition we've attained.
Oh my god. I can't believe we got past the security guard. My god, Jules, I can't believe you wrote me into this.
Oh, settle down. I mean, they wrote warehouse on the keys. Why would they leave them locked somewhere if they didn't want somebody else to steal them?
But why did you steal their bloody keys? You already stole 3 games from them.
I borrowed them. That's not the point. They must have some games that aren't shrink-wrapped. So, right, over there, there's the Nippon shelf, all right? Here's the Oddville shelf. What's that over there? Is that Brazil? What, 400 cup? It doesn't matter. Anyway, see what we can pick up, and we just, if we find something that's in shrink wrap, just... Oh, wait, somebody's coming! Grab one of everything!
Okay, so the deal is this. We just robbed the Watch Your Game warehouse.
Well, robbed is a bit strong.
And we were looking for games without shrink wrap because, as you know, unless you have the combination on the shrink wrap, you can't get into the games. Well, they were all bloody shrink wrapped.
That is a problem, yeah.
So we're going to give them away, which means our prize, which first started off as a copy of Railroad Revolution,
yes,
then expanded to 3 copies
yes.
of Railroad Revolution, has now expanded to 1 lucky winner is going to win the What's Your Game collection. That is 1 copy of all of the in-stock What's Your Game games, which
includes Asgard, which is about the end of the world, Nippon, which is not about the end of the world, Oddville, which is about a city, Madeira, which is heavy and in Portugal, Railroad Revolution, which is about railroads, Vasco da Gama, which is better than people say, and Signori, which has dice, and that's quite a lot.
That's 7 games, Giorgio. So
yes. Well, I just carried Oddville and you carried the rest.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I'm very strong then. So the rule to this, go onto our Facebook page, like our Facebook page, and then leave a comment on the post, which we'll repost.
Yes.
We'll repost, go on there, and for a 2nd and 3rd place win a copy of Railroad Revolution.
That is true.
1st place wins Asgard, Nippon, Oddville, Madeira, Railroad Revolution, Vasco da Gama, and Signorie, and you don't pay any postage, and you get them to your door. So I would suggest, if you want to win this amazing prize, get on it.
Exactly. Go to our Facebook page, Perfect Information Podcast. There's a pinned post right at the top. Post your favorite quote from the show, this or any other show, well, of ours, obviously. Like us, follow us on Twitter, join our guild. Let us know you're there. And, when we see you there, you'll be entering the competition. And then through the magic of, I don't know how, we'll find 3 very, very lucky winners.
And in the middle of December, we'll announce them.
Pretty much, yeah.
So just remember, like our Facebook page, put a quote from your favourite quote from the episode on that post, and you could win.
Bunch of games. Bunch of games.
A bunch of games. Is that your name on the list? Well, get in there then. Get to the bar and get buckled. Welcome to the guild. Oh, Georgios.
Yes, Ben.
I had a really weird dream.
Were you in a warehouse and carried out a box of games?
I dreamt that there was me and you.
In a warehouse?
And we were in some burnt-out building. Like it was a garlic factory in the city.
Garlic factory?
And society had just completely disintegrated. And we were sort of scraping around. TC had become a sort of android killing machine that was going around killing everybody.
Wait,
and
what do you mean, become?
And it was I woke, and it was so vivid, this dream, George. It was really odd.
Yeah, probably.
But
you know, you do weird things at night. I have no idea what kind of liquids you put into yourself before you go to sleep, so maybe that was that. Or bad cheese.
I have some news.
Or bad oranges, maybe.
I have some news, George. You interrupted my news then.
Okay.
Talk about bad oranges.
Do we have like a sound effect for news? Like dan 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 dan. And now the news. Go.
I feel like I'm under pressure now.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm under pressure and I've been forced to speak.
Yes.
It's like one of those forced speaking camps that I hear that they have. I'm not feeling all right. Anyway.
Are you really running this joke into the ground? And it's not a good joke to begin with.
No, but really, right?
Yes.
So, the last time we spoke, we talked about me and T and R were going to do a gig in here on Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
And
How did that go?
I was going to debut the song.
Yes.
That I wrote about Janine. Well. Anyway, there was a power cut right as the song started.
Oh, that's tragic.
And being a primarily computer-generated band, well,
Yes,
we couldn't really play the song.
Clearly.
And I don't think. I mean, I saw tension. Very close to the plug socket, just as we were about to start.
Oh, right.
I'm sure that had nothing to do with it.
Probably not, no.
But anyway, we agreed. We had a little chat. Said, okay, we'll have to leave this song out. And then, as soon as we agreed to that, power came back on, and we played the rest of the gig. Right?
Well, isn't that lucky?
But afterwards,
yes,
Janine came up to me.
Oh, that's nice.
And she said, you wrote a song about it. And I told her I did. And she said, it's a shame I didn't get to hear it.
She's so polite.
Well, then she asked me to email her the lyrics.
All right, and she's courageous as well.
So I had to get them off the back of the beer map that I written them on and type them up neat,
Oh, well done.
And I sent them her, and she wrote back with one of those emoji things.
Oh.
Don't know those O-face ones.
I'm not quite sure O-face is the term you're looking for here.
Those surprised ones.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And the O-face.
Yeah. One of those surprised emojis, the O-face.
Yes. I've heard a lot of people are surprised by that, yeah.
And well, that was I received that email yesterday. Right?
All right, excellent.
And then this morning, I got another one.
Oh, okay.
And it just said, would you like to meet for a coffee?
Coffee is good. So you don't drink coffee, but other than that, coffee is good.
So she's gonna have a coffee.
Oh, clearly.
gonna have some nerves. And we're gonna meet tomorrow, Georgia.
Well, good for you.
And I noticed a change in the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
More sort of furtive glances towards me across the bar. More sort of not slamming my drink down in front of me and walking away as if I was a plague that she wished to outrun in the dark ages. Well,
like I said, she's very polite.
Well, we're going to meet for a coffee, and I've got my fingers crossed, Georgios, and I'd appreciate if you and anyone out there who's listening cross your fingers too for me, because that's how it works, right? That's like science, isn't it?
Yes, science is definitely what you're talking about. Yeah.
Because if we all cross our fingers, unless we cross our fingers, a fairy dies or something, isn't it? And we've got to ring a bell or something, and it comes back to life.
Yes, ring a bell. I think it's a disco song.
So everyone, cross your fingers for me, and
well, with some luck, we'll be hearing less about how lonely Ben is and more about how I try not to imagine what we're going to hear about.
Well, fingers crossed, Georgios. There'll be some pretty lurid tales of nighttime amours to come.
Well, now I am doing more than crossing my fingers.
Anyway, let's get on to the guild last time.
Yes.
What was the question posed to the good people of the guild, Georgios?
The question was, what games fell out of favour with you and why?
So, what did Anthony?
I haven't.
I know him as Tony.
Do we? Is he somebody
The boy
we're familiar with?
Yeah, no, I met him. Yeah, he's a nice fella.
Nice fella. Very young. He looks very young.
Tony Boydell. He's very young on his picture. When you meet him in real life, he doesn't look that young.
He doesn't.
The magic of cameras.
Yeah, probably the magic of cameras. Yeah.
Anyway, so what did he say?
He mentioned Magic the Gathering, which I am told is a card game.
I've heard this.
He feels there's no need to explain himself for why it fell off a cliff for him. But he says, and I quote, "Mana screw, mana glut, and a pernicious cynicism on the part of Wizards of the Coast."
Now, I have a question to pose to you, Georgios.
Okay.
Does the character of a publisher affect your desire to play their games?
Oh, yes.
So if you think that this publisher is cynical and that they're not very good, their customer service isn't very good, and you feel like they're doing things to make money, but then they bring out a game that could be potentially really, really good and everyone's saying it's fantastic, does that affect your desire to play it?
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
Explain.
In this case, I'm going to end up with a strange position here. But what's that game that's been pushed like the last couple of weeks? And
Minions.
Maximinions, yeah. So this game, everybody keeps telling me it's great. Everyone I hear, oh, it's so much fun and yada yada yada. So much stuff for such a small price. And I've looked at the media blitz that sort of preceded this game. How a lot of well-known reviewers you mentioned as well. Well-known reviewers more or less posted their glowing reviews of the game.
At exactly the same time.
Very coordinated media blitz. And I found myself sort of remembering something you said about the board gaming industry, about how it feels like it's still very friendly, how it's not so corporate. Not obviously there are corporate interests involved.
It doesn't seem to have the egregious overreaching of more sort of professionalized industries.
Exactly. They're not so much. I mean, they're friendly with one another.
Yeah. With
some obvious exception, of course, in the hobby's history. And this seems like a push into something very professional, very polished, very, very particular and well thought out attempt at penetrating the market and getting ultimate, word of mouth out. I'm not saying the game is bad, not at all. I'm also not saying that anyone somehow, I don't think that the people who rave about this game are being blinded or being dishonest, not at all. I do believe they enjoy the game, but I have to say, I have no great desire to play this game soon. I mean, if the opportunity should present itself, I'm not going to reject it, but I'm not going out of my way to find a group that plays this game so I can join them. I'm just not that interested. I think in part it comes down to the fact that it's such this huge gap between how other publishers try to push their games, smaller publishers try to spread word of mouth, try to go to conventions to present the games, tweet, reach out to reviewers, all this kind of stuff. How they go about to sort of present, this is something we've done. I think you'd enjoy it. I think we'd be very happy, we'd be honored, whatever. I'm not honored, but we'd be very happy if you talk about this, if you review it. And this idea of, right, we have the flexibility, we have the foresight, we have the strategy in place, and we're going to trigger it now, and then we will have a well-sold product.
So this multi-billion-dollar company manipulating the market using their huge amounts of resources.
I think manipulating implies some sort of sinister motive. I think they're just playing the corporate game very well, and I don't like the corporate game being played in my favorite hobby.
Right, I agree. It's that kind of thing where you have your cool indie bar that plays punk music and things, and then because it's cool, a load of blokes in suits come and sit at the bar after their day's trading in the stock exchange because that's the thing to do, and you think, no mate, you don't get to come here too. You have your entire centre part of the bloody city. You don't come here. This is my world, and I agree. Now, this might be completely wrong and everything, but I get that same feeling and innate distrust and sort of opportunism, I guess.
I think I wouldn't. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I wouldn't go that far in my dismissal of this of the publisher. It just lowers my motivation to seek out this game. It doesn't excite me the way, let's say, Inish excited me, or still excites me because I still haven't played it. But the way I found out about this game, it popped up here, people were talking there, I saw it in Essen, everything. It generated an enthusiasm about this game, an interest in this game that Maximinians did not.
Right. All right, so Georgios.
Yes.
We have an eminent game designer.
Yes, we do. Although by his own admission, apparently he's a 50% game designer. That was a bad joke, and it doesn't even work because
you haven't referenced the post yet. It's all right.
It's so clever. See, this is sort of fourth dimensional joke construction.
Exactly.
You start with a punchline and then you introduce the setup.
So this is Jeffrey Allers, designer of Alia Acta Est, Citrus,
okay,
amongst other things. Georgios, very nice man and a very well-renowned man within the industry. What does he say?
He mentions games that fell out of favor, and now we got the setup for the joke earlier. About 50% of his prototypes, he plays them to death, so we don't have to, which is very kind of him.
Well, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because I wonder because I'm not a game designer myself.
Right.
I wonder by the time the game's actually in the box and published, if as a designer you're just bored out of your mind with a bloody thing because you've played it solid for however long the development process takes. I mean, we were kind of privy to the development process of Railroad Revolution, right?
Yeah.
And we probably played the game 20%.
Oh yeah.
Of the amount.
Less probably.
Less than the developers and the designers did. You know, and I never got bored of the game, but I played probably Railroad Revolution more than any other game I played this year. Right?
Probably, yeah.
And, you know, I just wonder if by the end of it, you're just like, you get your production copy through and you're just like, I'll just put it on the shelf, I'm never going to play this now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I can imagine this being the case with games that are fairly heavy, that have a lot of moving parts. I think Railroad Revolution would probably qualify, even though it's one of the lightest games in the What's Your Game collection. It's not light, but, you know, comparatively. I do think that if you're playing a game that has a lot of individual rules elements that you're tweaking, that you're changing, that you're figuring out, then yes, by the time you play it the 40th, 50th time, you're done. But if, say, you're playing a game that has a very, very simple core, I can't imagine Codenames being a very tiring game at the end of the playtest, at the end of the development.
I'd be interested to know how long it took him to design, and if you compare it to other games of his that are incredibly complex.
Right.
I'd imagine Codenames was quick. I imagine the idea came together. You know, it's like Paranoid by Black Sabbath.
Oh, right, okay.
The record company said you need one more track for the album. It's not long enough, so they went away and recorded Paranoid in 30 minutes.
Oh, right.
And, you know,
not bad.
And it's their most famous song and all of that sort of stuff. And I think Codenames is one of those just blitzes of inspiration that comes together very quickly.
Possibly.
And because it's so dependent upon the people who play it, it's difficult to be bored of Codenames, I think.
I guess so. I mean, I could imagine it being boring at some point because you know the words. But, I mean, there's another game that I quite like. I don't know if you've had the chance to play it yet. When I Dream.
I haven't played it yet.
Which also has a deck of cards. And I think there are a few moving parts in there. Not too many. I quite like the game. I can imagine the playtesting, even at the end of the playtest session, or even at the end of the development process, I think there's still fun in this, still fun to be had, because the input of players matters much more, or rather changes the experience far more than it would in a game like Railroad Revolution.
Well, we have some game designers in our guild.
Right, yeah.
We have a few game designers. Come on the guild, tell us what the situation is. Are you bored by your game when it comes out into publication or not? Tell us that, whether you enjoy still playing it. Okay, so Dirk, I like that name.
Dirk
Miailov, which is how it's pronounced because I speak, as you know, Georgios, all of the languages.
Yes, I do all of the accents and you speak all of the languages.
Dirk Miailov.
Yes, I'm quite sure there are about 14 vowels in there.
He says basically a number of things.
Yes.
He lists Ascension, Star Realms, Terra Mystica, Cthulhu Realms, and Flux. Let's get rid of Terra Mystica and Flux and forget that he mentioned those. Let's forget those, Dirk, not for any reason, but it doesn't, support my point. I'm forgetting.
We can cut this whole explanation short. Those games were basically replaced by games he preferred. That's fairly common. But the other three games, Ascension, Star Realms, and Cthulhu Realms, that's a very interesting reason why those games sort of...
You said you were going to cut this explanation short, George.
I was, but I don't do things short.
That's right.
So the reason why those games fell out of favor with him were the existence of an app.
And that really interests me, because I played the Star Realms app, which was fine.
Yeah.
I played the Ticket to Ride app, which was okay. I played the Carcassonne app, which was fine. Not one of them, I felt, though, have recreated the experience of a board game. I can't see how they could replace the game.
See, I'm surprised because I did kind of expect you to do that because of some of the things you said early in early episodes. Namely, I think what an app does is recreate the challenge of the game mechanics without the social layer that board gaming provides. Basically, you still get the challenge that the game itself provides. In Terra Mystica, you still have, you have to plot out how to best place your new buildings, which building you should build towards, which action you should take, which special ability, and so on. You still have this challenge in there. It's still this aspect of the game is still there in the app, and it's usually well preserved. But what's missing is the unpredictability of a human opponent. What's missing is the social dimension of sitting down at a table, playing with another person, and of course, what's missing is the tactility of the whole thing.
Well, I think what I've often said about why I like mechanically rigorous games is because they legislate for a very narrow band of experience, right? Because they're mechanically so rigorous, they're never going to be super, super bad, and sometimes not super, super great. Although I think the really good ones can be like that. But I like that the mechanical rigorousness legislates for the people around the table. But the reason I don't like the apps is because it cuts the people around the table.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
The whole event. I mean, the point with analog games, because people have to come together, because people have to sit around a table, because there's an element of setup time, kind of every time you play is an occasion, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
In a way that playing Farmville just isn't. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. I think, that's one of the main points that I keep stressing almost every chance I get, that I play these games because of the social experience they provide with me. That's why I have far too many games, because I hope that each game in my collection, I have to cull it at some point, provides a distinct experience with the group. It's even though I have far too many hidden movement games, I still feel those games provide a different experience when I play them, even with the same group. A game like Letters from Whitechapel is going to feel fundamentally different from Fury of Dracula. It's going to be fundamentally different from Nuns on the Run. All these games, even though they kind of share the same genre, they feel different and as such deserve a place in my collection.
Also, I think fundamentally, these games aren't optimized for computer play experience. They're optimized for analog experience, and no matter how good the app is, I find if it's going to be converted to that medium, it's going to take the spirit of what the original game is, and they end up being as far away from the game as possible, so both games can be appreciated, but just not as the same game.
I agree, yeah. I think you can save the puzzle, but you can't save the experience.
Absolutely. So, Dimitri.
Yes.
Dimitri Belaz.
Yes.
He's got Dimitri, what's that? Is that Greek name?
Could be either Greek or Russian.
Because he's American here, it says.
Well, he is in America.
But
did he? Oh, I just realized. He has these micro badges and they spell out
nope. And the P is what, Georgios?
It's the Perfect Information Podcast logo, which is, as a side note, was also hastily put together in about half an hour.
But it looks gorgeous.
It's fantastic.
And also, I'll just come back to this, there's a post on the Guild. I have loads of Geek Gold that I'm never going to spend. I'm giving away free micro badges. Find that post on the Guild. Write, I want the money for a micro badge, please, and I'll give you the money. I'll just give it you.
Yeah, that's what he does.
So what does he say?
He says, and I quote, "Most deck builders fell from favor for me when the scales fell from my eyes and I realized that 90% of them are the same." I think that's an interesting point because my first reaction was, no, that's wrong. My second reaction was, well, kind of. My third reaction was, no, it's wrong. And this is why. I think deck building as a pure game genre in itself was pretty much exhausted with Dominion. I mean, there are great games. I quite like Eminent Domain. It's pure deck builder. I know you quite like Xenon Profiteer. Played more often than I have.
It's fantastic, yeah.
I think they're all great games, but they are variations on a similar idea.
Yes.
What's interesting, though, is the mechanism of deck building that is slowly starting to creep into other designs. This is, I think, the most fascinating aspect of the concept.
Well, Wallace did that first, didn't he?
Right,
with Few Acres of Snow. Few Acres of Snow is brilliant. I think I would recommend to Dimitri, if you're a bit jaded with deck builders, try A Few Acres of Snow. It's ostensibly a deck building game,
right?
But that board presence really changes it. It's fantastic.
Exactly. I think there are quite a few games that include cards in a way of deck building. I mean, I think last episode we talked about Flamme Rouge, which I really, really like. And to some extent, it it has something of a deck building element in it. Although, I mean, I'm quite knowingly stretching the definition quite a bit. But the idea that you have a deck of cards that you can expand or minimize throughout the game, change what the cards do and how you use them. It's this idea of putting together the options that you have throughout the game is very clever, very potent, and I think we're going to see it pop up in quite a few more games, which I think is the main reason why I can't dismiss the deck building genre.
Absolutely. I think deck building games in themselves, I don't agree with Demetri. Oh no, I agree in the sense that I think they're all very similar, but I think they're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I like the mechanic, and I think it's dependent on whether you like the mechanic or not.
Oh, I
really.
Right.
But also the way it has been, so the way it has been now, in the way that worker placement was, where worker placement was the centre, and now, like Lewis and Clark is a great example of this, where worker placement has become an aspect to the game, another cog in the machine that you have to get in sync with the other cogs. Deck building has, I would say, become that to some degree too.
I agree.
And so, I'd recommend you go and look at A Few Acres of Snow. It's fantastic.
I've played Mythotopia and I quite liked it, even though there were some odd bits. I think it's been selling fairly cheaply here in Berlin, so I might at some point pick up a copy. But yeah, I think I don't think Mythotopia is going to end up my favorite game. I think there's enough of it to be fun.
And it's innovative, it's clever, and it makes you change your opinion about things.
Possibly. At least have a bit more respect for the genre, because it's not all just the minion clones. Tons of horror, notwithstanding.
I'm enjoying this conversation, Georgios.
I wasn't.
But, no. I mean, I think that possibly my intellectual bravado is intimidating, and I understand
that. Is true. Like most of our conversations, everything you say I find quite offensive. Everything I say is pure gold.
But I looked over.
Yes.
At Janine. And she gave me a grin, Georgios.
You?
I'm pretty sure it was me.
Okay, good.
And that filled me with butterflies in my tum-tums, Georgios. So
do you have to run to the loo now?
I have to leave the place. It's that thing, right? Yes. If you arrange to go on a date with someone for the Thursday, and you bump into them on the Wednesday, just in the street, it's really bloody awkward, isn't it? And you go, oh my God, and I can't use all the conversation I was saving up for bloody Thursday now, can I? It's bloody terrible. So I'm gonna go home and shave some parts of me, and
try to stick to the page.
And then next time we meet, I'll be able to give you a battle report on the coffee meeting.
Please don't.
Say goodnight, Georgios.
Oi with the poodles already.
YOLO-games.com, Georgios. You know what they sell, Georgios?
Games?
Games.
Ah, excellent. Do I get a cookie now?
You've eaten all of my cookies?
Yeah, but you keep asking me the same question and it's easy to answer.
You know, it's the joy on your face when I throw it in the air and you catch it in your little mouth. Yeah. So, YOLO-Games, Europe's premier cheap games emporium.
Yes.
Give us something they're selling, Georgios, at their cheap prices.
Well, one game I noticed that I'm really aggressively looking into is Pandemic. And not regular Pandemic, but Pandemic Reign of the Cash Register. I mean, Reign of Cthulhu, which is going for a fairly cheap price of €40, which I believe is
That is cheap.
That is quite cheap, yeah.
There's loads of miniatures in that, isn't there?
There is, yes. There are cards as well, and apparently it looks to be slightly easier than regular Pandemic because you don't move around quite as complicated as you do. But I've been told by our senior Pandemic correspondent overseas, Mr. Nick Mariner, Professor Nick Mariner.
Come on, let's not sell him short now.
Right, Dr. Mariner. That it is actually quite difficult. For people who like difficult co-ops, and I do believe you do, Ben.
I do.
This might be worth a look. It's Pandemic Reign of Cthulhu for €40 only, which I believe is about £260.
It's going up and up.
Oh, right.
This whole leaving the EU thing was very clever.
Yes, for someone. I'm not sure whom, but yeah.
So I've got here, Georgios, the sequel to the perfect information game of the year last year, Georgios.
Pandemic Season 2.
It was the Grizzled, Georgios.
No, it wasn't.
It was the Grizzled.
I refuse
Go
that.
back and listen to the episode.
Yes, people do go back to listen to the episode because...
I am right and Georgios is wrong, essentially.
Well, that's not the point, but we do recommend some good games.
But the Grizzled at your orders, which is the expansion I own, which gives you missions to go on, which gives the game a bit more depth and makes the 2-player version even more compelling, is here at only 14 of your euros and 99 of your cents, Georgios.
Of those Euro cents. Yeah, that's fairly cheap, actually.
That's almost nothing, Georgios.
Well, it's slightly more than nothing, but not enough to be something.
A universe from nothing, Lawrence Krauss said. A game experience from almost nothing, Benji Maddox said.
Benji. Really, you're going by a dog's name now.
Well, I'm thinking if I go a bit more cutesy in that,
yeah,
I might find more birds.
Birds, right. Well, yeah, good luck with that.
So, Georgios, got another game?
Yes, I do.
YOLO games?
Yes, I do. And I'm going to go on full-on nationalistic because apparently that's in vogue right now.
Very vogue. I'm feeling alt-right.
No.
I'm trying to make it a thing, Georgios.
No, please don't. I think people have already succeeded in making it a thing.
Hey, London, how you feeling? Are you feeling alt-right?
No. They're just going to yell neo-Nazi at you. Anyway. The game I suggest people have a look at in case they don't already own it is Cyclades, or as I would like to propose the so-called proper Greek pronunciation, Kyklades.
So that's how it's pronounced, Kyklades.
Yes, Kyklades.
Have you got to do that TH thing with the D as well? Kyklades.
Yes, because that's how you pronounce the letter delta.
Okay, delta, not delta.
No, we're not in Egypt.
So that American airline had it wrong all along.
Yes. American Airlines have it wrong all along.
Delta.
Pretty much. Anyway,
that's quite sexy.
Kyklades is a game by Ludovic Montblanc and Bruno Cathala. It has a fairly interesting, quite fun bidding mechanic, and it's at its core an area control game. It's from Matago, so the production is really, really quite nice with unique miniatures for each player. There are, I think, up to 3 expansions right now, 2 big expansions, 1 small one. I have the second expansion, which introduces team play, also very fun, and it's just really, really nice to look at, fun to play. It doesn't take too long, and one thing that I quite like, which some people do not, is the suddenness with which it can be won. Because I enjoy a game where you do not see the end coming all the time. All of a sudden, somebody pulls a really clever move, fulfills the winning condition, which in this case is building 2 metropolises. It's fun, it's enjoyable, it's tense, it's exciting, and there are surprises in there. And it's available at YOLO Games for only $44.99.
That's nothing.
That's... yeah.
Kyklades. That's almost nothing, Georgios.
See, how come when you try to say something in Greek, it sounds like you have some sort of speech impediment?
I wish you wouldn't draw attention to my speech impediment, Georgios. I worked hard to cover it up.
Well, yes.
And my speech impediment. Anyway, so my last choice that you should go out and check out is a bit of a cheat because it's not actually on the website, but I'm hoping when the show comes out it will be on the website. I know because I bought it from YOLO-games.com, because not only do I take their money, Georgios, I also patronise them as well. I mean, I give them my patronage, not that I say, oh, that was well done, good job. I mean, I give them my patronage.
But you do say that as well.
Oh no, I patronise them too.
Yeah.
But this is the new number 1 on the hotness on Board Game Geek, my new foray into the world of solo gaming, and that's Arkham Horror, the LCG. It's very good. It's very gripping. It's a lot of fun. You can play it on your own. You can play it with friends. I don't know how much it is on the website. I know what I paid for it, and I'm hoping it won't be cheaper than that. Otherwise, I'm going to be really bloody angry. And get onto him. Say, I want my Arkham Horror LCG from YOLO-games.com.
Is it still a solo game if you're bringing other people?
Yes.
Really? So
That's
it's sort of like video gaming then? It's like, let's all join together and watch me play Super Mario.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I might actually have to recommend this game to somebody else then.
People just love my society.
Okay, if you say so.
I'm Nick Mariner, and this segment is all mine. Hello everyone and welcome back. It is exactly 2 days since BGG-Con ended here, and I am about to head out the door to drive to Colorado for Thanksgiving. As the only member of our team who actually went to BGG-Con, I thought maybe I would squeeze in a sort of off-the-cuff thoughts on the games I played there and what I'm excited to talk about. I didn't want to miss out on this episode since my last bit got cut short on account of globe-crushing catastrophe. Okay, so the con was great. Had a blast. Met a lot of great people. Played a lot of great games. If you're listening to this and you got to sit down and play with me, I had a great time. There are a couple games I played, though, I really want to talk about and get excited about and spread the news on in our show. The first one is Ulm, ULM. Ulm is a game that I think has come out of Essen. It's really flown under the radar. Not a lot of talk about this game. It is really neat. It is just pure, dry, crunchy Euro. You move your little boat piece down the canal and activate different spaces as you go, and as you build up the city of Ulm. But it's got an action selection mechanism. Essentially, there is a 3x3 grid of tiles at the top of the board that each tile represents one of, I think, 5 actions. On your turn, you draw a tile from the bag, and then you slide it into that grid based on what actions are available, pushing one off, and essentially then you get to activate all 3 actions of the tiles represented in the row you just created, the new row you just created. Such a crunchy and neat and thoughtful experience. I got absolutely obliterated at this game, dead last by 1.5 miles, but it is a really neat little puzzle within a game kind of game. How many times can you say game in a sentence? I just did 3. That's pretty impressive. 3 within the same 4 words. So check out Ulm if you can. If you like the crunchy Euro with themeless nothingness but good gameplay, highly recommend. The next one I played is Cottage Garden. It's from a designer. I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Is it Uwe? Well, it's German. Is it Uwe Rosenberg? I think that's his name. New guy. Nobody's ever heard of him, but I think he's really got the chops to maybe make a splash in our hobby. When I played Cottage Garden, and ever since I've played it, I've spent my time wondering, are my thoughts on this game peppered by how much I love patchwork? Because there's similar aesthetic to it, the Tetris-style pieces on a little board, and you're trying to cover up all of the spaces. And I think patchwork is one of the finest designs I've ever played. It is such an exceptional game that I've played so many times. And so when I played Cottage Garden, I wasn't as enthusiastic, and I can't help but wonder, and I even asked the people at the table, have you played patchwork? And most of them hadn't, so they couldn't really offer the same feedback. But what I'll say is that I liked it a lot. I'd like to get a copy whenever it hits the shelf, but I'm in no particular rush. It does not replace patchwork. Even though it's multiplayer, it does not replace patchwork for me at all. The mechanics are unique to themselves. It's not the same game as patchwork. It's not just patchwork for 4 players instead of 2. But there's way too much uncertainty in what you're doing as you play. Patchwork, you can sort of math out the next couple steps and figure out what'll be available for you. But it is much harder to do in Cottage Garden. So the strategy isn't as deep, even though there's more things going on. Very fun game. Love to play it again. Love to own a copy, as I said, but it absolutely will not replace patchwork as far as I'm concerned. The next one on my shelf will replace a game for me, and that is Fields of Green. Fields of Green is the Among the Stars system made into modern 21st century farming as opposed to building a space station. If I have the choice between 2 games, I will never pick Among the Stars over Fields of Green unless I'm playing with fairly new-ish gamers. Fields of Green takes the Among the Stars system and adds a couple things to it. There's a second resource you have to worry about for powering stations, or what the cubes you'd use to power stations. Now there's water and there's food. In Among the Stars, where you have to you draft cards of different colors. They all are shuffled into the same deck, and you sort of get what you get. In this game, you pick which colors of cards you want in your initial draw, so to sort of tailor what you're looking for. But there's also a new phase in this game called the harvest phase, which at the end of your drafting, and you put the 6 cards in your tableau however you would, some of the cards have a particular harvest effect in which you have to be able to use or power them with resources from your board in order to get special effects. And this is a way you can build up a really interesting money and resource engine. It is so clever. I like it. I love Among the Stars. It's a really fun drafting game for me, and I'm going to get my hands on Fields of Green as soon as it hits the US market and isn't $85 like it was at the con. And I will play this game as much as I can. It is great. And I love the fact that it's modern farming and not medieval farming, which is, an overdone theme in our hobby. The second to last one, the penultimate one, if you want to use a pretentious word, is the Networks from Gil Hova. Got to meet Gil. Ben and George us reviewed this game already on the show. It is so good. It's so good. You will hear me talk about Networks again, I think, on this show at some point. But the Networks does, for all of the labor I have gone into in this show of separating myself as someone who doesn't care about theme, that it is the theme is what gets me in this game. I love television, unabashedly love television. It's sort of hipster to not own a TV, which is bizarre to me. I love TV. And this game has brings out the theme of running a television studio in such interesting and fun and playful ways. The cards are playful. The art is playful. The characters that you see are really funny, and not so specific to what's actually on TV that it won't be playable again in 10 years. But the game also provides these really interesting and meaningful timing decisions. And I love games that ask you to make timing decisions. When do you invest in a show? How long do you hang on to that show? Can you manage your resources well enough to boot that show right when you need to and replace it with something more profitable for you? And it's great. It is an exceptional melding of theme and mechanics. The theme is so much fun, but the mechanics bring that theme out in every decision you make in that game. And I can't speak highly enough for a game of Networks. Please get your hands on it if you can once it comes over here. I think he sold out there. And as far as I understand from what he actually said when they interviewed him on this show, there aren't any more copies coming this way until next year. So when it does, get it, play it. You will love it. If you like the theme at all, if you're drawn to theme, this game gives you a great theme and gives you a great gameplay that is honest to that theme. And I think you'll get a kick out of it. All right, the last game I want to talk about, and I cannot believe that of everything I played at BGG-Con, that this is the one that I talked to about the most to people, is Fuji Flush. Fuji Flush is a card game from Friedman Freeze. Again, newcomer to the hobby, might be a big deal. Let's wait and see. In Fuji Flush, you draw 6 cards. The winner is the person who gets rid of their cards first, sort of like Uno. This game will forever replace Uno for me and family holidays. I'm taking it to Thanksgiving. It's already in my bag for tomorrow. You play a card in front of you of a certain value. If anybody in the circle after you plays a card higher than you have to dump your card and draw a new one. If it comes all the way back around to you at the table and you still have that card in front of you, you dump it and don't draw a new one. That's how you get rid of cards. Now, if I play a 6 and the person next to me plays a 4, neither of us are out because the high number is still 6. But then if the next person plays another 4, they combine, and now the new high value at the table is 8, and I have to get rid of my card, draw a new one. If anybody plays like a 10, then both of those 4s have to go because the new high value is 10. And you play like that until someone has gotten rid of all their cards. I just told you every single thing you need to know to play that game. It is so simple, but so good. We played it 4 times in a row and I didn't frankly want to give up, but we had gotten invited to do another thing, which was neat. And so we had to stop where we stopped, but I was fully ready to continue to play this game until someone told me to stop. I am so excited about this tiny little card game that I wasn't even going to bother with because there were so many other good things at the con that I wanted to get my hands on that had come over from Essen. And now I can't get this damn game out of my head. I can't believe that this is the one that has nested its way into my brain over everything else. But please order Fuji Flush. Stronghold did a good thing by picking this one up. You know, it's just a simple card game that I think is going to be, if we spread the word well enough, a very quickly become a standby in our hobby for cons, for standing in line, for family holidays, because you can teach it to anybody. I'm fully confident I can teach it to my 9-year-old and the rest of the family. And yes, that's the game I want to talk about. That's it. I think I'm out of time. I'm going long. I'll say one other thing. I did not play Terraforming Mars at the con. That was by far the game I saw on the most tables. I didn't play it because I've already played it almost 20 times this year. You are going to hear me talk about Terraforming Mars on this show when we do our year-end recap. I guarantee it. It's really good. Go play that one too. I don't need to say any more about that. Had a great time. Thanks for everybody who came out. I'll see you again in 2 weeks. I'm Nick Mariner on Twitter at The Good Mariner. My board game blog is iCallYellow at iCallYellow.com. Thanks for listening.
It's crass, unsophisticated, and emotionally manipulative.
It's this week's review. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Art History 201. Today we're going to talk about Mondrian's unusual technique. As you all know, he would place pre-painted sketches on a grid and using a complex randomizing system which was anyone, dice, yes, to select the sketches he would use. And being an artist, he would, anyone, he would throw them in a number of different ways, and then pick them up again and assemble them later. The sketches, of course, not the dice, but I'm getting off track. He would determine the prize of his masterpieces by color majority and the strength of the sketches themselves, and that is how we get stinking rich by selling them to rubes. Any questions?
Yeah. Skip to the end.
It's the one sentence review. Blending classicism with art brute, Mondrian rigorously employs technique, but never sacrifices utility for beauty.
The Mondrian Dice Game breathes new life into a straightforward set collection game by eschewing familiar rules cross-fertilization and going straight for the jugular. Dice throws.
Georgios? What's that in the corner of the room?
I don't know, but it's eating peanuts with its nose.
Okay, so we've just come out of a pit full of olive oil where we've been beating each other because we have a bit of an impasse as to what we think.
One thing didn't really have much to do with the other, though. The beating and the oil is just something we do before the review.
Yeah, okay. But it was more vigorous this time because we have an argument about what we think the elephant in the room is.
Yes.
I think the elephant in the room is the bloody elephant, and Georgios thinks it's the pantaloons it's wearing.
Yes, because an elephant shouldn't wear pantaloons, obviously.
Well, my thing is, I think the elephant in the room with this game is that it's a dexterity game.
Mm-hmm.
And should that colour the game unfairly? Should people think that it's a frippery, something that has no skill or inherent sort of worth, because a lot of people think, dexterity games, all they are is just throwing stuff around, and that's fine, and it's fun, it's distraction, but it's not really a game.
Those people are freaking idiots. But that's just my, I agree with you in so far that the dexterity element, once you sit down to play the game, is central to the experience, without question. It's something that, shapes the experience. It's very much something that you remember about the game, is something that makes it stand out. The reason why I was hesitant to talk about the dexterity element and all the prejudices that people apparently have about dexterity games is that what struck me about the game, or really the reason why I found it interesting when back then when I prepared the list for Essen and put it on my list, was that it was a game that heavily featured art in its components. And I was trying to figure out, how does it work? I mean, for one, I like the art. I just like these strong, vibrant colors. And then I wondered, how does art work within the game? Other games are sold on the art because there are very nice looking components. They're carefully drawn pictures of dragons or landscapes. I mean, there's, Kanagawa, I believe, which is a very beautiful game. And part of the appeal, part of why you want to play it, is because it looks so nice. There are other games that work because they look so nice. And sometimes the nice visuals sort of overshadow some clunky design work. With Mondrian, I feel that the art is nice, even though it's not the typical type of art that draws attention to itself, but it's nice and clean. I like looking at the board. I like playing with the components, but I do feel that there's a game in there, that the art isn't just sort of what's trying to sell you the game. And I would even say it's not even the dexterity element that's trying to sell you the game. It's the game as a package that's presenting it itself with the art, with the dexterity element, and it works.
And to come back to my side, focusing on the dexterity, I think the dexterity is not simply there to test dexterity, but to add a tactical element to the game that feels to me Euro-y and not simply a demonstration of one's manual dexterity.
Right. Feel is a nice segue into the next section.
So, what did you think of my interactive, candid photo montage?
Well, it was certainly an experience.
Okay, so, my experience of this game, and I don't think this is the reason I like it as much as I do, but my experience is tied up with, as a lot of these games are, that we're going to be reviewing over the next few episodes, are tied up with Essen. So me and you were walking through Hall 4?
7, I thought?
One of those, one of the little ones. And you just say to me, let's play this game.
Yeah.
And it's this little game in the halls that don't have the big boys, and it's a little booth, and they have a couple of tables.
Yeah.
And we sit down to play this game, and it's 2 days into Essen. And it is hands down, by that point, the best game I've played at the convention. I came out of Essen thinking, this is the best game I played at the convention.
Oh, wow.
And I still think, to some degree, this is the best game I played from Essen.
Okay.
I think there are games that are up there with it, but we just played it now, and it's still great. Because the experience of playing this game is always funny, because it has a dexterity element. So what you're doing is essentially you have cards that have Mondrian designs on them, and they have numbers. And what you're doing is you have 5 modes of delivering dice onto the board. You have throwing with your left hand, throwing with your right hand, throwing with your eyes closed, dropping from a predetermined height, and flicking. And what you're trying to do is get the dice onto the board to match the numbers or exceed the numbers. Then you get to take that card for free and put it into your hand. These feed into later majorities when scoring, but also the cards are worth the face value on the card. So what you're trying to do is get the cards that match what you're going for in terms of majorities, but also just score you high number of points. And you're hoping that the die face falls to enable you to take that card easily. Now, if you can't, you have cards in your hand that have numbers, and you can make up the difference from the pips of the dice with the card you want to take. And all of this is tempered by the fact that you have other people trying to do the same, but also knocking your dice off the board.
Right.
And so there's a thinking about how and which numbers you want to get, which colours you want to go for, but also whose dice you want to get out of the way. And all of that feeds into this really crunchy, surprisingly thinky game that is very quick but very satisfying.
Yeah, I think that the one thing I would add to that, because it's a common complaint about dexterity games, and I think Mondrian does not invalidate the complaint, but I think it uses it cleverly, in that the dexterity element, most people don't like playing dexterity games because they feel I'm not nimble, I'm not clever enough, I'm not good enough at them. And this game does not suffer that much from it, because it seems to me from the times I've played it that the dexterity element basically makes a certain selection a bit more random.
Right.
Because you don't really have, I mean, it kind of sounded like if you're nimble enough, you're clever enough, you can sort of place the die the way you want on the card you want. And that never happens so far in my game. It's part of the fun. The anti-dexterity element of this game functions as a randomizer. It makes it surprising, makes it funny. You flick something, it goes off the table, or it hits your own die or something. It creates situations that are silly, that are funny, that sort of, you see what the other player is going for, he fails, and it's funny.
But okay, so the last time we played,
Yeah.
I was going for this card
Yeah.
right from the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
And you play over 4 rounds?
3 or 4 rounds, yeah.
And your amounts of dice increase every round. So your amount of goes increase. But also, you then have to choose what way of delivering the die onto the board you're going to do. And
You only get one each turn.
Yeah, and in the final round, you have to do every one of those 5 delivery methods. And I got the card on the final round.
Yeah.
And I felt really good about that, even though I lost the game, and I never fucking win a game against Georgios. But even though I lost the game, that one thing that I was working towards, and often I find I play games and I realize that maybe this isn't going well. Okay, I can rejigger what I'm looking for and say, as long as I do this though, I feel like I've achieved something. And in this game, it allowed me to do that. It's not just random.
Oh, no.
You can refine the way you flick and the way you throw. And you can use other people's dice to bounce off and all of this. But it's all going into a mathematical rubric about how many points you score at the end.
Yeah.
And that is great.
I agree. I mean, but what I was going for was that the dexterity element isn't what defines whether you win or lose the game. It makes it a bit easier to get what you want. But since there are at least one other person, if not 3 other person playing there, not all of them might be that good at flicking dice. They might accidentally throw off your perfectly placed die and screw up your plans. What I mean by randomizer is that it's not that it's out of your control. It's not that you have no influence over it. You do have influence over it, obviously, because you're the one rolling the die and throwing the die. But which card you end up picking up at the end of the turn is as predetermined by your skill as top decking the right card in Netrunner, or drawing, or basically taking out the right token out of a bag.
Right.
Or, I don't know, or rolling a 6 when you need 4 above or something. It's something you have some control over, but not enough to make it predictable, not enough to make it purely a game of skill. There's luck involved, and it's this luck, it's this element of the surprise, the chance, sudden upset of somebody just hurling the die across the board and screwing up everybody else. Just makes it really, really funny and fun.
And it's that hoary old cliche, but it's mitigated luck, right? The game is an exercise in mitigated luck. That's what it is. And that's, if there's going to be a luck element in a game, it needs to be controlled. It just can't be pure luck. And this game never makes you feel like you're gypped. And I just want to say one more thing about the experience. And I think this is important, even though it's sort of intangible and unquantifiable, is that I've played this game with a number of groups. And I've played this game with sort of casual people, and I've played this game with heavy strategic Euro gamers. And inevitably, when you pull this game out with heavy strategic Euro gamers, they look at you and they go, come on now.
You really should start punching people in the face.
Not once have we come to the end of the game and someone's gone, yeah, but that's just stupid. Every one of them has got to that point at some point in the game and gone, this is a puzzle to be solved. I get it. There's things to do. And so this game has gone down universally well from all types of gamers. And I think as an experiential thing, that's vital to say.
Oh, I agree. I think one of the smartest things the designers did in this game was not pick a dexterity challenge and tack some rules on top of it. And I would actually aggressively argue that it's not a case of a bunch of rules mitigating the dexterity element. I think it's a nice blend of the two, in that the dexterity element is central but not defining for the game experience, and it is well embedded in other rules that are not dexterity based, like the majorities, like making a tactical decision which card you place back on the board to get the card that you want off the board. Kinds of that, stuff like that. And I think that's really quite clever, and I think we're slowly moving towards rules now.
I'd just like to say on what you just said,
yes,
you've never been writer.
I am writer, or well, it doesn't matter.
So what do you get if you mix together sexual frustration, hatred of the world, and congenital stomach problems?
That's basically you.
That's design. This game is an absolute vindication that rigorous design makes a game successful. What do you think, Georgios, about the design makes the game compelling and fun to play?
I think it's quite interesting in that the way the dexterity element is how you open the game. It's the first thing you do in the game. You throw the dice, you pick cards, and then as you move towards the end of the game, you start making decisions over which cards to keep and which cards to put down. One of the, I think, smartest things about the rules, because they provide a nice button for the entire experience, is the way they're scored. In that you look at the number of cards every player has, and you can only score as many cards as the player who has the least cards in their hand still has. So basically, even if you have one player who scored almost nothing, but everybody else took all the cards away, it's not going to help them much, because it'll be determined by the player who has the least amount of cards, how many cards you get to score.
If the person with the fewest cards has 6 and you have 15, well, tough. You're only going to get to score 6 cards, which is a beautiful way of limiting runaway leader. Mm-hmm. It's a very clever way of allowing players not to feel gypped, because you can say, okay, I didn't get cards this round, but even if I get the lowest, I just put all my cards on the board, which is super easy. And if I've collected all 6s and 7s, well, they're going to have a bloody hard time.
And I think this is the brilliant bit about the scoring mechanism, in that you choose your cards in secret. You do not know, you might have collected cards that suggest that you have a majority in certain colors, but you do not know for certain until your opponents have also revealed their cards. They might have gone for a different majority. They might challenge you on that majority, and because of the cards you had to discard, you do not actually have the majority. And since the cards with the most squares on them, with the most rectangles on them, colored rectangles on them, are the lowest scoring cards, you have a very, very dangerous decision to make. Do you keep all the low scoring cards, which give you a lot of different colors, maybe scoring you the majority, or do you go for the high scoring cards, which only have at most 1 or 2 squares, but get you a lot of points? And this is really clever, because at the end you have a pivotal decision to make that all the dexterity is built up to. And this gives you a lot of agency, it gives you a lot of control over what happens, and you're not actually dependent on how you roll through the dice, on which die you hit or which card you landed on. It all comes down to your final decision, which cards do you want to score? And that's agency.
I'm going to come back to this. I'm just going to reiterate this. In the game, you have cards with squares in a Mondrian style, but the cards with the highest points have the fewest squares. They have the fewest colours. So a 7-point red card is a block of red. That's worth 1 to the majority. A 1-point red card might have 3 blocks of red, 1 block of blue, and a block of yellow. That's 3 points to the majority. And so that's what it is. You are constantly trading off that, do I score the points on the card, or do I score for the majorities at the end of the game? And that is so clever, and that's the crux, I think, of this game, in that it's forcing you to think. But also, I think the dexterity element allows you to rejig halfway through the game and allows you to go for different strategies. And this is a design thing, and this, I think, is an iteration thing. The distribution of the cards is really good. It must be, because the scores are always fairly close at the end.
Well, not in our last game.
The scores are usually pretty close at the end. And so everything has been worked through. And so you have what's ostensibly a kind of simple concept, but it has been designed to such an extent that the game doesn't feel broken for any of the players. I've never seen it where anyone comes out at the end thinking, well, this is just bullshit, which is a distinct possibility with dexterity.
I'm trying to think of a dexterity game where I had such a bad experience, but I honestly can't think of one. I don't...
Flick 'em Up for me. I felt Flick 'em Up for me was...
I played it. I thought it was okay.
I thought Flick 'em Up took too long to set up. I thought the dexterity dictated it too much. That's all there was flicking discs.
Right.
There were fiddly rules that were uninteresting because essentially what you were doing was flicking discs. And at the end, it didn't feel tense. It didn't feel interesting. It felt overly complex and unengaging. Whereas this, you have something going on other than flicking dice and dropping dice. You've got something you're working towards. You're painting at the end.
Yeah.
That's really satisfying.
Yeah, I agree. I think the reason why I hesitate to talk about the dexterity element in the elephant of the room section was because I don't feel the dexterity element, while memorable, is central to the experience because it blends these two elements together. The majority cards, the decision making, the which cards to score, which cards to discard. These are the typical gamey decisions that you expect from non-dexterity games.
Right.
And the dexterity element is just one small aspect of it. It's like, to go back to the guild section, it's like you wouldn't call a game like Mythotopia a deck building game just because it has a deck building element in it. And I feel the same way about Mondrian The Dice Game. But it's a dice game, yes, but I would hesitate to call it a dexterity game.
But up until this point, I've never seen a dexterity game in which the dexterity is not this absolute central function of the game. And that's what makes the dexterity element of this game so interesting, is that it doesn't overwhelm.
Yeah.
What it does is complement. And there are many other aspects that feed into the enjoyment of this game. That's interesting because the minute you say to someone, this is a dexterity game, they have that picture in their mind. And this is when I've introduced it. And I quite like introducing it to people who wouldn't like dexterity games in that way.
Yeah.
Because you see them at some point in the game just going, no, this is a game though.
Yeah, I
like
agree.
that.
Yes, I agree entirely, but something tenses up in me with the idea that dexterity games aren't games. They just,
But the fact is, I'm converting these people. No, I'm not. The designer of Mondrian is converting these people and saying to them, look, this might have an exterior appearance of this, but actually, this can be this too.
Yeah.
And that is a wonderful thing to see happen. It's a wonderful thing to see the scales fall from people's eyes and for them to appreciate and experience something new. And Mondrian does that in spades, and that is all the design of the game. And I think it's spectacular.
I think it's just competently, confidently, and cleverly done.
Playing this made me want to play.
So this is unprecedented, Georgios. This might sound like a mental blockage or just a complete lazy cop-out, but it isn't.
Okay, if you say so. I believe you.
The game Mondrian makes me want to play.
Oh, wait, let me guess. It's going out, enjoying life, and hugging a stranger.
No, those things are insanitary.
Okay.
It's Mondrian. Mondrian seems to me unique in my gaming life. There are games that come along that tickle the itch of a different game. This one, without descending into crude double entendre, tickles its own itch. It is...
You fail, I believe.
It's unique. It's a melding of different aspects that creates its own beast. And when I play Mondrian, all I want to play is Mondrian. And to say anything else and to come up with any other kind of game is just dishonest. It's not true. Mondrian makes me want to play Mondrian again.
That's interesting. Yes, in my case, it's not that I don't want to play Mondrian again. I do. But it makes me think of another game. I think partly it's the tactile element of probably sharing the same dice manufacturer, because I do believe they're the same kind of dice. And the game I'm thinking of is Dice City, which is another case of you roll a bunch of dice, you arrange them on the board, but you also have two separate elements. You have the random element of the dice, and then you have tactical decisions as to I want to buy this building, or I want to collect these resources so I can buy this building, or I can rearrange them. And again, it's kind of random. It's using somewhat sleight of hand to suggest slightly more depth that's the wrong word. Slightly more control over what happens than you actually have. And I feel similarly about Mondrian, even though I quite like it. I don't think it's a negative. But Dice City also has a strong random element because you roll the dice and then you place them where you want. But then you have a slight tweakage. You have the ability to sort of move dice around. You have tactical decision making each turn, and you have some long-term decisions as in what kind of effects do I want available to me depending on how the dice fall. And I like that. And actually, yeah, I could imagine switching from Dice City to Mondrian and back again on a more or less regular basis. Once I've played a round or two of Mondrian, I wouldn't mind playing a game of Dice City and the other way around.
And if art is supposed to mirror life and tell us about ourselves, and I believe board games are art, what can these tell us? Well, they can tell us that life is an illusion of control. And that's interesting.
Wow. Yeah, this is going to be a long, long section. Yes, I agree, but I would have told you that about every game ever. And it's my main argument why I don't really have the patience for people who complain about the randomness of some game or, oh, it's just random, I don't have any control. And like, my usual response to that is like, grow up. That's what it's like. If you want control, I don't know, lock yourself up in a room somewhere. The randomness, the unexpectedness, the lack of control, that's what's fun about games. And that's what's fun about life.
And that's the point. The only way to have utter, complete control is, as you say, lock yourself in a room, make sure you have enough food to last you until the day you snuff it, and don't do anything. Because life is affected by random events. So, Georgios, should people go out, if they can, and fingers crossed, I hope they can, go out and buy Mondrian?
Yes, one caveat. Somebody should buy me a copy, because I don't have one and I don't know where to find it. No, I think it's a worthwhile addition to any game. It's accessible, which I mentioned earlier is important. I think it's a central tenet of any good game. It's accessibility. And it's colourful, which again, great fun to look at. A good game should be fun to look at. And it gives you something interesting to do. I think if there is one thing that the game does not push as hard as I like about games, is that you are not that involved with other people. You're basically staring at the board, hoping people don't kick off your dice. But other than that, no, it's fun. It's good. It's great. There's little to criticize about this game other than maybe its availability.
It's still my favourite game that I played at Essen. Mm-hmm. I just played it now. It's wonderful. It's really exciting. I don't agree with you that it's not interactive. You can knock other people's dice. Part of the strategy of the game is trying to knock other people's dice off the board. But it's a proper game. Don't be fooled by the dexterity tag. It's not just flicking discs around. It's a real game in which you can really plan, in which your decisions can have real import as to whether you win or lose. Now, I don't know about the availability of this game, but if you see this game, buy it. It's cheap and it'll be the most game you get out of that decision in a month.
Yeah, it depends on the month, but yeah. And I need to correct you. I didn't say it's not interactive. I meant, like the beginning of the episode where I talked about trying to get into people's heads. I think you have, the only moment where you have that decision is at the end when you need to score. And if I had to struggle to find a drawback, this is literally the only drawback I can find. It's not as much of a get into other people's head game as I like, but that is not a draw in this game. It's just a quality that the game has no interest in, and it's fine. It's a good game. It's worth, it should be in your collection because it's small. It's not some FFG monstrosity that sort of kills your wallet. It's worth having, it's worth collecting, it's worth recommending to your friends who want to try out games.
Look for Llama Dice on the internet, locate a copy of Mondrian and buy it. It's great.
Really? That's how you want to end the review?
And we come to the end again, Georgios.
Yes, it is the end. I feel I'm always very positive when we get to the end of the episode. I always say yes, but I always say yes.
Well, I always feel a little melancholy at the end. I feel that the frequency with which we do this isn't enough. I do it every day.
Should I say no?
You see, that was a kind of non sequitur that put me off, and I don't understand. So I think we should just say, Georgios, how do lost people contact us.
Right, we reviewed a Spanish game. It doesn't mean you need to be...
I speak all the bloody languages. How many times do I have to bloody say this, George? For God's sake, I speak all the bloody languages.
Yeah, the bloody ones especially. All right, you can contact us by way of... Well, let's try email. infoperfected@gmail.com.
Send us an email. No one ever sends us bloody emails. Send us an email. infoperfected@gmail.com.
Send us some questions. We love talking about things other people want to know, because at some point we're going to run out of things to say. Hard to believe, but probably true.
It's not going to bloody happen.
Probably not, no. Yeah, so that's email. We have Twitter accounts, InfoPerfected and PerfectedInfo. 2 Twitter accounts, half the fun. I believe that's the saying, right?
That's the advertising slogan I put on it.
Well done. And we have Instagram photographs. We kind of, I at least have stopped. I haven't actually played it enough.
Stopped isn't the word. Fallen off. But they'll come back.
Yeah.
They'll come back.
Yeah, Instagram photos. When we sit down to play games, we usually take pictures and upload them so you can see what we've been doing. And be warned, we're not wearing pants. Luckily, we only photograph the game, so it should be fine.
Go to our website. I've started occasionally Facebook living things.
Oh yes, you did.
Whereas I, what I do is I drink and then I ramble. It's very similar to the podcast, but a bit more rambly and
and you're on your own.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Facebook. We have a Facebook page, and the Facebook page has a great feature. For one, it has a name on it. It's called Perfect Information Podcast. But for number 2, we have a competition. You might remember from earlier, we have a competition. There's a top post pinned at the top, which is why it's called the top post, where we talk about the competition. The competition is fairly simple. Quote us, back to us. Your favorite quote from the show, this or any other show, back to us. And then, we have a bet here as to... Well, so far Ben is winning because he gets all the quotes.
But and don't forget, you got to like us on the Facebook page.
Oh yeah, like us.
Then you have to put a quote in the comments, your favourite quote from the show. We are going to, in the middle of December, we're going to announce the winner. You can win every game that What's Your Game currently have in stock. This is 7 games from one of the
one
best.
Of each.
One of each, yeah.
Not all of them.
Not literally, or not. You're not going to get like a lorry full of games. But this is one of the most respected board game publishers in the world. They make meaty, crunchy, heavy Euro games that are incredibly satisfying, and you'll get to own the complete collection. Caveats, not complete, but there's like one game missing or something. But the complete collection, and you'll be able to display them broadly. You've got a whole shelf of games you can win. So go onto our Facebook page. That pinned post, like our page, put a quote, you can win those games.
Yes, lots of games.
Oh, sorry, just one more thing. What we want you to do is quote us, but the way we're going to decide who wins is randomly.
Yes.
So there's no qualitative judgment on the quotes you pick. I know, George just wants something of his, but...
Well, clearly, I do like lifting the curtain. Basically, we're definitely going by the quote we like most. Whichever flatters me most gets a game, and whichever flatters Ben most gets a game, and the last one we don't know yet.
That's not true. It's a random number generator. We're doing it as a random number generator, people, so don't believe what he says.
No, I will do it. I will force people to quote me so they can get games.
So yes, Facebook, like us, favourite quote in that pinned post, and you can win a truckload of games. How else do people contact us, George?
Well, we do have a Board Game Geek Guild, which is apparently something board game geeks do and go to, and it's number 2348 and can be found at, what's the name? It's, I think, the Guild of Perfect Information.
The Guild of Perfect Information.
You can... reply to some of our threads there, like our guild question, which we will put up about today when this episode airs, and you can comment on the guild question, maybe show up in next episode.
Also the micro badge. Go onto the micro badge thread. There's a thread that just says get a free micro badge. Go on there, post, and I'll send you the Geek Gold, and you can get the micro badge for free.
Yeah, basically. And you're more than welcome to post threads of your own. We do not have a monopoly on that.
That's threads, not threats.
Well, yeah, threads for Ben, threads for me. Finally, yes, we have a website. On this website, we do not only share our current episodes and slices and what have you, we also have written texts, so-called articles. Articles by luminaries such as Monsieur Anthony Boydell,
famous British game designer.
As you can tell by the accent. I think, I'm not quite sure what the right term is here. Head of chief of, or part owner, I don't remember.
Owner of, I think.
Owner of Pelgrane Press.
Yeah, Kat Tobin, the owner of Pelgrane Press, she does a bi-weekly column on the RPG industry and things besides. The website's really worth going to. Go to the website. We write reviews. We write opinion pieces. It's a one-stop shop for all your gaming needos.
Yes, eventually will be. Right now it's just a lot of us talking. But yeah, we have reviews every Wednesday. We're going to sort of slow them down a bit because writing reviews is hard. I mean, talking about it is easy, but writing, so difficult. So yeah, there'll be regular text showing up each Friday, either from our regular contributors or from us, talking about games, talking about RPGs, and talking about games.
And we've been going on a long time, so we just want to say, yeah, remember, come to the website, go to the guild, go to Facebook, enter the competition, and just be in touch with us, people. We love you all.
Yeah, and we like being touched, I think.
Say goodnight, Georgios.
I know.